Michael? Michael? Uh,
Which one? Me, Michael?
you, exactly.
Because we got a bunch of Michaels on here.
Michael, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm, as you know, I'm new, and this is my first, conference, and I'm new to the haiku field. But so I wanted to ask you, is when you share a non-published haiku, in, let's say, in a group, or right here at the conference and so on, does that mean that when you want to submit that haiku for a journal, to be published and so on, you can't because it has been
on the journal.
Publicly shared?
It usually depends on the journal. If you read carefully what their criteria
Okay, so it
is,
depends.
Yeah, in some areas it doesn't matter at all. Most of them I would say no, but I would check with the individual journal that you're submitting that poem to.
Okay, but you're saying that it may limit
It might, but I doubt it that in this for very, very few, but I don't know what journal it might be. In most instances, sharing in this kind of environment is not going to limit your ability, generally speaking. So there's always different, circumstances.
It's true. Yeah.
I think model rockets might be the one exception to that. Model rockets tends to not want anything that appears in the universe, but I think most of the others wouldn't think that anything that you workshopped in a workshop or a closed thing. I mean, there is going to would be a problem.
Okay. So there are very few that really put that limit, even in groups or workshops or conferences. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
She's got to be.
Hi, Christopher Harold, can you hear me? You're on mute.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Oh, good.
Hi. It's Greg
Hi.
Higgins here. I just wanted, just by happenstance, I saw you were on. I just wanted to kind of give a fan love letter. I mean, I've really enjoyed your haiku. I mean, I've kind of, I teach a lot of classes or have taught. I teach playwriting at the University of Missouri at Kansas City. And I always open each class with a poem, and sometimes I'll use haiku. So, I mean, some of your haiku that I would read to the class, they have really, and these, are not people who've come from a haiku background, but just from memory, your haiku foghorns, we lower a kayak into the sound, knocks people out.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, wow.
cloud shadow long enough to close the poppies. I mean,
Wow, thank you so much.
oh,
That's amazing. I'm really happy.
well, just the one that really sticks in my mind a lot, and I've been kind of wrestling with this is I may get a word wrong, so I apologize, but river's end, the sound of my name and the hiss of receding surf. I hope I
You
got
got
that right.
no,
Um,
you did. You got that one right perfectly. Good
uh,
memory, and I'm touched. Thank you, Nick.
Frank.
Yeah. Um, yeah, one that, I don't know why it popped into my mind, but one I'd written seems to stick with me really too is three translations of the same breeze:
Oh,
pine, oak, cottonwood.
oh,
Yeah, I don't know. It's just stayed with me. Oh, well, it's good to be here. And I've been at quite a distance from the haiku community for, maybe a decade. I submit rarely, mostly just to the nest because it's my baby that's grown up,
right.
and John Stevenson's doing such a good job. Um, yeah, I've been involved with novel writing, which is the other end of the spectrum, but it's just engrossing. So I don't know. There's novels on both ends of the spectrum. A haiku can be a novel.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that because the I mean, I started. I think I had a haiku in Modern Haiku magazine about 1975, and
Mhm.
uh, and then at the time I kind of got really interested. But I write. I mean, how I was able to survive was writing plays, and and
Mhm.
then I came back to haiku really because of part of the COVID shutdown. And so tell me about, so why did you go away from haiku for about 10 years? And what, I mean, if you don't mind. So.
Okay. No, I don't mind. Um, I was sitting in the hot tub one day, and it just came to me that I should try writing a novel. And this was, I think, the day Francine Poirot died, and I was sitting in there just thinking of her. Both my parents are authors. My father is a National Book Award winner as a biographer, and he did mostly Napoleonic biographies and Madame de Stael. I think I was intimidated by my parents. So I just didn't want to write because I felt I could never live up to those standards. So I just played music for most of my life as a rock and roll drummer. And finally, I came to haiku because uh, I became acquainted with Jim Hackett, who lived a few blocks from me, and David LeCount, who also lived 2 blocks from me at the time. So I actually became Jim Hackett's gardener for about a year. And haiku suddenly just burst onto me from reading his book. So I guess what happened psychologically with me is that I felt like, oh, I can do this. It's only, 5 or 6, 10 words. It's not a novel. I don't have to worry about my parents' approval.
Right.
So I jumped in. In short, that's it.
Okay. No, it's terrific to hear James Hackett, because when I was an undergrad, I took classes from a poet named David Ray, who turned me on to R.H. Blythe. And then because of Blythe, I discovered James Hackett. So like the fish, I'm going to miss a word, but the fish that's motionless, staring upstream.
Oh, yes, I know that one.
So yeah, I felt that I really kind of fell in love with American haiku because of James Hackett. And I miss his work. I noticed that sometimes some people kind of denigrate the 575 form that he wrote in so heavily. But when I look back at his work, I mean, whatever, maybe a dozen haiku, just to me stand out like a colossus, of the work that he did.
Oh yeah, he was amazing. He was a fierce man, actually. I did a lot of listening, and he'd use me as a bouncing board because we'd just sit outside his house for hours sometimes, eating snacks or a lunch, and me taking a big break and talking haiku. So I think he was talking to the haiku community, talking to me as if I was the haiku community that he had become a hermit from.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes he was, kind of bludgeoning me. But I was sitting there going, yes, but I feel the same way you do. That's what I feel.
Right.
By the way, David Ray, you said?
David Ray.
Yeah, how do you spell Ray?
Ray.
Okay, it's a different David Ray. I played music with a David Ray for, not more than a few months and one gig. Only he spelled his name Rea.
Mm.
And was from Nashville. So I did a part of an album with him, and then we did one gig with Bo Diddley. But
great.
Totally different Ray.
Uh-huh. Well, he also, I don't know what part of the country you're in.
I'm in Washington State.
In Washington State, okay. Well, the David Ray edited a magazine called New Letters, Literary Quarterly. And Lloyd J. Reynolds did calligraphy. I think he taught at Reed College. I think he was in Oregon. But Lloyd J. Reynolds, fantastic calligrapher. I mean, he's passed away, but he wrote a lot of what he called weathergrams. He would write, I would call them haiku, and he'd put it on a strip, like of a grocery sack, and then he'd go tie it to the trees, so it's got a shelf life. But I've thought some of his work should be in some of the anthologies of haiku, but that whole thing. I mean, I was fascinated. So you mentioned that James Hackett. I just read. I guess it's from the archives. Charles Trumbull wrote an essay about a long piece, about James Hackett, and how he became disenchanted, I guess, with the haiku community. So I'm not. Also, I'm just based on that essay. So I guess what were the reasons that he was using you as a sounding board, what was his disenchantment with the world of haiku, I guess, in America?
Okay, well, I think primarily he was, he felt that we should stick more closely to 575 for one thing.
Mhm.
I don't remember a talk with him about Kigo in particular. Um, but I think he was just reading, the haiku that was coming out in Frog Pond, modern haiku, and feeling that they just weren't up to snuff. He was very critical. Um, so the people that actually had the arguments with him, or the contention of some kind, would probably be the better ones to ask.
Mhm.
Because that was a long time ago for me. That
Yeah.
was back in, well, I guess it was, oh, well, it was in the 90s, 91, 92,
Mhm.
93, back in there. So it isn't that long ago, but my memory's getting some holes in it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Christopher, could I ask you, who are you talking about? Who
Yes?
are you talking about? Sorry, who are you talking about? Who are you referring to?
James Hackett.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
hmm
That makes sense.
Yeah, I gardened for him for quite a while. And
Oh, cool.
so we had a lot of haiku conversations. And I was, enamored by his book, and The Zen of Haiku.
Mhm.
Zen and the Art of Haiku. I can't even remember the name of the book right now, but it's basically, yeah, I can't tell you much more than that.
Okay.
Really, I don't know if I can answer a lot
Well,
of questions.
just the university library. It wasn't one book; it was the 4 individual books that I guess combined to become the Zen of Haiku.
hmm
But it's just I find myself, I go back. I've got like my own personal anthology, a file on the computer where I kind of pull and Christopher Harold poems. Um, that and it strikes me that, as well as I say, uh, 10 to 12 by themselves are just like, okay, I don't need to read much more today. I've read a few haiku from James Hackett and I feel full, so I'll
That's a
read some
good
more
way to
haiku
do it.
tomorrow.
hmm
And I just, I hope it's the case that it remains the case that people really enjoy his work as time goes on. I hope.
I hope so too. Yeah, I mean, the
Um,
experience is there, and when I read other people's haiku, even those that I feel like, that could be improved, uh, I go past it and put myself into the experience itself first, so that I'm not just being judgmental in myself, but appreciative of what they're trying to say. Because even if we haven't had much experience writing, and are just are in the early in the learning curve about haiku, it's still a very powerful experience, one that's passionate for the person who is having the experience and wanting to put it into words. So um, I just respect everybody and want to encourage those who are still trying to figure it out how to write, to just stick with it and go into the experience itself, not to worry, just let it write you, kind of thing.
That's right.
I know I'm rambling now.
No, that's the part of why it was on my mind about a year ago. I guess it was the conference um, during a lunch break. I was talking to John Stevenson about Foster Jewell, the
hmm
haiku of Foster Jewell.
hmm
And he pulled out the book that Charles Trumbull wrote about Modern Haiku magazine. And so it was something like 580 haiku by Foster Jewell had been published in Modern Haiku, I guess, during the decade of the 70s, I guess that was. And it was on my mind because that haiku anthology, Haiku, the history of haiku in English or something. There was one haiku by Foster Jewell, and John Stevenson was saying, well, he published 580 in that decade, which meant, I guess, that he was the most widely published haiku poet in the English language, I guess, for that decade. And
wow.
And now he's kind of, disappeared. But I hope that never happens with James Hackett. I don't think it does, because I've used James Hackett's haiku, to start a class. And, again, college students who are not inclined necessarily toward haiku or don't have much experience with it, and yet they hear some of James Hackett's haiku, and the sound, I hope the sound comes across. You'll hear people go, like that. It's just, which to me is one of the best sounds you can hear. If you got 20 people in a room, all go, at the same time. So anyway.
That's a haiku in itself.
Yeah, the sound of Well, I think of that in a play. If I'm doing a play well, there are certain moments where if you've got 400 people that go at the same time, that's a heady experience.
Great achievement, I think.
I wanted to ask about James Hackett just because I was kind of perhaps somebody might feel that Foster Jewell's poetry was not in the same league with James Hackett, and I don't know, but I recall at the time reading Foster Jewell's haiku, which for me was an eye-opener because he'd write about the desert a lot, which I hadn't read any desert poems. Basho didn't write about the desert much.
He lived in Japan.
Yeah, that's right. So not much desert haiku, but that was the eye opener. And so it's kind of I was always Hackett was the poet I really revered. And I want to believe that kind of what happened to Foster Jewell does not happen, with James Hackett's haiku, and at least based upon what my experience has been reading them to other people. His work is it's just immediate, it's just wow, in that So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on that.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. And one thing that came up a number of times in our conversations was he had an experience, a near-death experience, that really set him off on the haiku trail. I don't know quite how he came to haiku in the first place. Blythe, most likely, but it was one of those experiences that takes us far beyond what we think reality is. And it just puts us in the present moment just slams us into the present moment. So anyone that's had that experience, probably, it doesn't go away. It may become sublimated, but it's there and instructs our muse, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay. Yeah, I know that happened to me a couple or 3 times, and mostly due to being in a Zen monastery and things like that. But it's just that there's a gift in haiku that goes beyond even the words. So if the haiku explodes the words in your head, then all of a sudden you're in that near-death experience without dying or feeling you're going to die.
So your haiku about, so you mentioned being in a Zen monastery. cloud, let's see, cloud shadow long enough to close the poppies.
Wow, what a memory you've got. Yes, that's it.
By any chance, did that haiku, did you write that haiku from experiences at a Zen monastery?
No, I wasn't in that position at that time.
Okay.
That came while I was still living in California, and it was in the hills. There's a lot of California poppies. There's a lot of California poppies here in Washington, as a matter of fact, and they're brighter because we have more rain. I guess at least the ones that I'm seeing in our neighborhood are just brilliantly orange as compared to the California poppies.
Well,
but,
they're probably California's screened through some smog or something. So who knows?
Yeah,
Something.
there's that, and there's lower latitude. I don't know.
Yeah, brighter. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
It's just good to sit here and talk with you. And
oh, that's
whoever else
terrific.
happens to.
So it's not the case that you've heard of. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm
You're
sorry.
talking about Foster Jewell. I'm holding up a book of his.
Oh, magnificent. Magnificent.
And I'll see if I can find out when it was published. It was published by the Sangre de Cristo Press in El Rito, New Mexico.
Yeah, that's where he lived.
And there's no date here, but it's got to go back to 1970 or 72.
Right.
And I don't know why people don't recognize his name or know his name. His daughter wrote too, but I don't remember her name.
Mm-hmm. Right, I've seen the name.
Yeah. There is an introduction here written by, I'm sorry, Robert Speaks.
Mm-hmm. Right.
All right, so with sand wave, beachcomber, and now haiku sketches, Foster Jewell unquestionably is in the forefront of English language haiku poets in the number of meritorious haiku published in book form, and I prophesy that this achievement will long remain. That people don't recognize his name anymore. It did not long remain.
Well, this is painful.
I recognize the name. Anyway, I had to jump in.
No, I'm glad you did.
Okay.
But what you said just now was painful. I mean, I'm glad you said it, but it's painful.
Why?
I would like to say
Our names are not going to be remembered after we're gone.
Hello,
Ellen Pizzarelli.
Alan Pizzarella here. Good to see you, Christopher.
Good to see you too.
Welcome
That's
back.
great. Pardon?
I would just like to say something about Foster Jewell. I'm familiar with his works. I had his books. He had another book called Mirage, which I gave as a gift to Debbie Kaloji when she visited us in our home. And that too is all about the desert and the Joshua tree, which Debbie was very familiar with. This is a guy with this long white beard, and he wrote some very fine. I remember his haiku sketches was very popular when it first came out. I noticed, even somebody held that up, and Mirage was too, and he was kind of unique in that sense. Yeah, and he was unique in that sense that he wrote about haiku in the desert, about the desert, which is a very, very beautiful place, and wonderful imagery there, and it's and then he was producing some fine poems, and that in that beautiful landscape there. Was a wonderful thing, and he hasn't been forgotten. His poems still appear in are anthologized, and he's not forgotten.
Well, let's hope none of us are.
People will newly discover him. Poets that write good work, they might fade a little while, but then they become rediscovered by younger poets coming to this into the community, haiku community. Our works are rediscovered.
Right.
So you should be pleased to know that.
Well, I hope he only had one poem in that history of haiku in English, which because the thing that he was a real eye opener to me is was writing about the desert. Well, as I mentioned, writing about the desert. I hadn't read any haiku from that. If you study the Japanese masters, so they didn't have the deserts there. So it was. I remember back in the 1970s as an undergrad student having that feeling. Wow, you can do that. You can write about the desert. I mean, it sounds so naive now, but like, wow, you can do that. It doesn't have to be about a cricket or a scarecrow or whatever. It can just look right around you. I mean, I don't have scarecrows. I spent lots of time in the Southwest, but lots of deserts. He was an eye-opening poet.
Wouldn't it be strange to go into the desert and see a scarecrow there?
Yeah.
Well, you can. I suppose you can find some.
There's 11 Foster Jewell haiku in Cor Vanden Heuvel's.
Yeah, that's correct.
There it is.
Right.
Haiku anthology.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys! It's so good to see you, Alan. Too. I've got to go off for a few minutes before coming back to the thing. So I will see you guys in a while. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Yep, you too.
Oh, we got Foster Jewell here.
I'm looking.
And read it, it's so small.
It's from Randy's.
Yeah, from Randy. I'm trying to enlarge my view, full screen.
This is Sarita. I put Foster Jewell link in the chat so you folks can look it up later and read over that. Oh, here it is again. Okay.
Good, thank you.
Thank you for doing that. I mean, my concern, I don't want to overplay it, but I'm glad that Cor Vanden Heuvel really liked Foster Jewell's work. It's just, my concern is, if that most recent anthology had won, as time goes on, maybe it's a concern everybody has. It's just, it's hard not to think of Percy Shelley's poem, Ozymandias, sometimes. So I'm pleased to hear that a lot of people still respond to Foster Jewell's work.
Well, in the haiku anthologies, actually a lot of American libraries around here, in the United States libraries, his hardcover, and some of his anthologies are still in the libraries here.
If you can you see this book on your share screen?
Yep.
Bug Haiku by J.W. Hackett. This is an enchanting little book, and I love it. It's a book you could read to your grandchildren or ponder like me in your old age. It's just sweet, lovely nature, garden-driven observations by Hackett for anybody who doesn't have or doesn't know about this book. And it's available. I bought this used online.
It's okay if your cat is talking. I enjoy hearing cats talk.
Thank you. I'm always afraid she's going to be bothering somebody. She's blind, and that's her only way of getting attention and communicating with me now when she is feeling lonesome, because, of course, everything's dark to her all the time.
Yeah, I think cats can be a good source for haiku. I know there's a few books I've seen about cats. Like there's even a book called Cat Coo. I think it's by Christina S&G from, I'm forgetting now where she's from exactly. But yeah, there's a book called Cat Coo. Maybe I'll put a link in the chat.
While we have an idle moment, I'll mention that Haiku North America has announced its venue and dates for 2023. It'll be at the Netherland Plaza Hotel in Cincinnati, and it's scheduled for June 28 to July 2. And watch for more information about that. I'll put a link in the chat. But it'd be great to have lots of people show up, and that will be an in-person event.